All righty. Kimmy completed her undergrad in culinary nutrition at John and Wales University. She has several years of experience working in various food service settings and as a chef. Kimmy is currently attending St. Elizabeth University and on the path to becoming a registered dietitian and completing her Master's of Science in Nutrition. We're so excited to have you here, Kimmy. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then start sharing her presentation, so just hold tight. All right, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Kimmy.
All right, thank you so much, Taylor, for that intro and everything. So like Taylor mentioned, I have a culinary nutrition background. I'm currently on the road to becoming a registered dietitian. But before we get started with today's presentation, I just want to share like a little bit of how I wanted to become a registered dietitian, why I want to pursue this career, especially because I feel like this topic really resonates with me. While I was in middle school, I was like a chubbier kid and all that. So I kind of struggled with like finding peace with my own weight and like learning how to eat. So I'm really excited about this topic. And then just through, I unfortunately had like a traumatic like little accident happen to me in high school. I broke my back skiing, and that was like a wake-up call. I hope that this doesn't happen to you or you don't know anybody, but for me, like that was a wake-up call for my health. And then that whole experience made me want to pursue a career in healthcare. And I love food and talking about it and nutrition. So I knew this was my calling with what I wanted to do with my career. So I'm excited to talk to you today about intuitive eating and health at every size. So for the objectives for today, we're going to discuss what intuitive eating is, the pros and cons, and how that compares to other diets and concepts that are similar. 2 interactive surveys. They're really quick, so I hope you guys will pay attention because I'll be asking for your feedback in the chat, and also investigating what health at every size means. And altogether, this should take roughly 30 to 35 minutes. So before we get started, I wanted to introduce a topic that I'm sure we're all familiar with, and that is diets. It's not hard to find diets being advertised on social media, on the cover of a magazine promoting an unrealistic amount of weight loss being in a short period of time, or seeing celebrities on social media promoting the latest detox trend. These are a few examples, and the list can go on, but what all these diets have in common is they offer an item for purchase, whether it's an app, a detox blend, a book, etc. In return, a promise for weight loss. It sounds pretty enticing, right? Well, in reality, these diets offer false hope. They take your money and leave you feeling like a failure at the end. And don't get me wrong, weight loss may come as a result. However, research supports that those who embark on a new diet may temporarily be successful at losing weight, but once the diet is over, most of the time, these individuals end up gaining all the weight back and even more than what they started with. This can lead to what is called yo-yo dieting, the back and forth efforts to lose weight. Diets can be disguised as many things, and some are more recognizable than others, such as the very popular keto or paleo diet. Sometimes diets can be tricky to distinguish and might not be labeled as following a diet per se. For example, an eating pattern that eliminates certain food groups or types of foods is still labeled as a diet. An example of this is if you eliminate all dairy products because you heard that dairy causes inflammation, so therefore you decide not to consume it. In this case, dairy has no known negative effects towards you, but you still decide to eliminate it because it has been labeled as bad, which is far from the truth. Another example of following a diet is being overly conscious of the foods being eaten, or strategically only eating clean foods because they are assumed to be good, or not having a past certain time of day because you have heard it will cause weight gain. This is where intuitive eating and health at every size comes in to break this disordered eating pattern with a non-diet approach. Weight stigma, also known as weight bias or weight-based discrimination, is described as stereotyping based on a person's weight. This can lead to body dissatisfaction, which is a leading risk factor in the development of eating disorders. The leading environmental cause of eating disorders is the social cultural idealization or obsession of body thinness. Weight discrimination can happen anywhere, whether it's the gym, school, work, or even the doctor's office. Surprisingly, weight discrimination occurs more frequently than gender or age discrimination. The prevalence is high and can lead to adverse and even dangerous consequences, such as psychological and behavioral issues, including depression, eating disorders, and poor body image. The image on the left represents the stigma with that thin body contains so-called healthful food, or that somebody who is thin eats these so-called healthy foods, such as fruits and vegetables, whereas the body on the right is larger and contains what is considered unhealthy foods, such as sweets and processed foods. This goes along with the stigma that thin people eat healthy and can maintain a normal weight, and those with a larger body are unhealthy because they eat these types of foods. But that's not necessarily true. It is no surprise that weight is an issue in the United States, and its prevalence is increasing across the globe as well. From 1999 to 2000 through 2017 to 2018, the prevalence of obesity increased from 30.5% to 42.4%. And there are obesity-related conditions such as heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and certain types of cancer, which in some cases are a leading cause of death. But on the bright side, these diseases are preventable. Key assumptions of traditional approaches to weight management include that increased fat mass leads to increased morbidity and mortality risk, that weight loss will prolong life, anyone who is determined will lose weight as long as they eat less than they need, and also exercise. Another misconception is the pursuit of weight loss is practical and a positive goal, and the only way for people living with obesity to improve health is to lose weight, and that obesity-related costs place a large burden on the economic and health system and can be corrected with focused attention to obesity treatment and prevention. Well, if those traditional approaches for weight management were effective, wouldn't the obesity epidemic in this country be improving? An alternative method to try and tackle the weight management issue in the US is the Haze Approach, or health at every size. Developed in the early 2000s as a response to the lack of success of traditional approaches that I previously mentioned that address weight management, this concept shifts the focus from a weight-focused paradigm to a health-focused one. It supports body acceptance to end weight stigmas and discrimination in hopes to decrease the cultural obsession with weight loss and thinness. It also promotes intuitive eating while focusing on a balanced diet, which teaches sustainable eating habits, along with promoting physical activity that is appropriate to the individual and is considerate to various body shapes and sizes. And ultimately, Haze is a concept that promotes safe and sustainable practices to promote health of the individual and the community. So these are some of the health at every size principles. I'm gonna just not really go over it too in depth, but these are total of 5 principles that I found directly off of the website. So the first one is weight inclusivity, which accepts and respects the inherent diversity of body shapes and sizes and rejects the idealization of pathologizing of specific weights. And then the addition of health enhancement and eating for well-being. So these are some of like the 3 first pillars to the concept of Haze. It ultimately encompasses better health, like self-care towards you. And then these are the remaining 2 of the 5 pillars. I'm just going to fit it all on one slide. So we have respectful of care, just celebrating your body diversity, being just kind to yourself, and then life enhancing moving. So again, like finding exercise that you enjoy and appropriate to your body size and physique. Now, how do we break the stigma? It's a long journey and difficult because the idealization for thinness is so ingrained into our culture. Some tips to start breaking away from the stigma and way to promote Haze include unfollowing social media accounts that promote a specific or perfect body type. This causes you to compare yourself to them, leaving you with body dissatisfaction. Another way to promote Haze is to not purchase clothing from companies or brands that only offer limited sizes, and not only offering just limited sizes, but just one specific size. This gives you a distorted feeling that you cannot wear these clothes unless you are this specific size, which, you know, you can only imagine how that might make like a teenage girl feel. Another way is to educate others, because promoting body positivity is a collaborative effort and there is strength in others. And ultimately remember that everybody is beautiful and you know it better than, and you know your body better than anybody else. So this is a little quick survey to wrap up what I just spoke about, the Haze. So I'm going to ask the question and then you can type in the chat box which answer you think is correct. So the question is, which behavior or belief does not fit into the Haze principles? I'll give you a couple minutes to read them through and decide. All right, I see a lot of B's. Okay, you guys were good. So the correct answer is B, as you guys guessed. Following a restrictive low-fat diet in hopes of losing weight. The others do promote the pillars of Haze, accommodating those who are larger. This is like a healthcare facility being more considerate to those who are larger. C is not correct because this does respecting others' body shapes does fit into the Haze paradigm. And then D also does fit because it includes exercise that you enjoy. But B is definitely not the right answer because being restrictive and cutting out foods that are labeled as bad is not part of this healthy at every size paradigm. So good job on that one, guys. So moving ahead, healthy at every size, a similar concept, it kind of intertwines, is intuitive eating. Some of you may or may not have heard of it, but it's a relatively new concept that was created in 1995 by 2 registered dietitians. It's an evidence-based mind-body approach that includes 10 principles, which I'll briefly go over later. This is their book on the left side of your screen. it was actually one of my textbooks for my class for a weight management course that I had to take. Super interesting. I highly recommend if you want to learn more about this concept and take charge of your own health. Definitely, like, even with me, have to remind myself, it's just been an eye-opening resource for me. So some of the key components of intuitive eating includes honoring your hunger, meaning that you're not ignoring your hunger cues, and also not waiting to eat until you are completely desperate. The whole point is so that you stay in control. So, for example, imagine evaluating your hunger on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, I am uncontrollably hungry and I will eat everything in sight, and 10 being uncomfortably full. You can't imagine eating anything else or you'll explode. The key is listening to those hunger and fullness cues to avoid being on either extreme side of the scale. This allows you to be more in control or empowered of your body by being more mentally present. So intuitive really just means being conscious where you're at and almost instinctive. So just trusting yourself in what you want to eat, I guess. So these are the 10 steps that these 2 registered dietitians have created as part of the intuitive eating concept. So I'll just go through them briefly. 1, first, you have to reject the diet mentality. And this makes making a firm commitment to give up dieting for the rest of your life. It sounds a lot easier than it sounds, especially because we're always always throwing at advertisements saying, like, you know, this is like, we're always looking for the quick fix, but you just have to trust that that's not effective for your long-term health goals. And number 2, honor your hunger. Listen to hunger cues, such as a slight growl of a stomach, a headache, grouchiness, a lack of mental focus, anything like that. Just pay attention and be more mindful of your body, and also trust yourself to eat amounts that will satisfy you. Otherwise, ignoring these cues can cause a primal drive to actually overeat, which defeats the whole purpose. And number 3, making peace with food. This is giving yourself permission to eat, and do not deprive yourself of any foods that sound appealing to you. So, and with this, like, trust yourself that, give yourself like permission, and then eat some like fun foods that you still enjoy while eating a balanced diet. And for the 4th one, challenge the food police. You learn how to reject the labeling of good and bad foods and the guilt associated with it. Number 5, feeling for your fullness. Pay attention to your fullness signals. Try eating without distractions or pausing during a meal or snack to evaluate your satiety. And this kind of just goes in with mindful eating too, which I'll touch base as well. And number 6, discover the satisfaction factor. So we find that the more pleasurable your food is, the more satisfying it'll be for you in your eating experience. So then the more satisfied you feel, the less you will feel the need to eat. And number 7, cope with your emotions without using food. We all have feelings of anxiety and loneliness, boredom, and each one has a trigger. But food won't fix these feelings. It might provide some short-term comfort, but instead of going for food to help with those feelings, try an alternative activity such as journaling instead of eating those feelings. And then number 8, respect your body. So a comparison for this is just as a person with a size 8 shoe would not expect to fit into a size 6 shoe, it is equally as pointless to have the same expectation with body size, let alone that being uncomfortable for your feet. So stop comparing yourself to others and focus on what you can do to take care of yourself. Number 9, exercise. Get out, be active, and just feel the difference too. Just not doing it because you feel like it needs to be a chore and something that you should do. Sure, it can feel that way sometimes. Like, I don't feel like working out, but you make yourself do it. And well, how do you feel after that? And that's really what kind of keeps you motivated to keep doing it. So paying attention to that and trying to do exercise that you actually enjoy for the purpose that it makes you feel good rather than the goal of weight loss. And number 10, honor your health with gentle nutrition. So this means making food choices that honor your health and taste buds while making you feel well. And you don't necessarily have to have a perfect diet in order to be healthy. So that kind of goes in depth with having a more balanced diet and not being restrictive and still eating like foods, fun foods, and then foods that you know that you should eat for health reasons too. So now that we know what intuitive eating is, let's discuss what it's not. This concept can be difficult to understand because it's not a black and white, but rather a gray area, as there's no right way to learn how to eat. It might be a challenge to grasp because diet culture has trained us to idealize a thin physique, and that anyone's body that does not fit this description is labeled as wrong. Food is tied closely with emotions, and when foods are labeled as good and bad, these feelings are internalized when we eat these foods and gives us thoughts such as, I feel so bad because I ate XYZ, whatever it is. These feelings lead to negative thoughts and behaviors around food that prevents us from being able to enjoy our foods and even make us feel guilty when we eat them. Intuitive eating is the opposite of what diets have taught us. That it is not a diet or a food plan. There is no pass or fail. It does not involve counting calories, carbohydrates, points, macros. It's also not a plan for weight loss, and also does not focus on body satisfaction. With that said, while weight loss and increased body increased body satisfaction are not the goal of intuitive eating, it can be a side effect of learning how to eat intuitively, but not a guarantee. So some of the pros of intuitive eating are here on this slide. But the dieting or weight loss industry makes roughly $71 billion annually. And of that, 95% of diets fail. These diets may offer temporary success in weight loss, but research shows that individuals who have short-term weight loss may succeed in that, but they end up gaining the weight back and even more. So intuitive eating teaches long-term healthy eating habits that are sustainable. Weight loss diets are intended to be short-term until the desired weight goal or appearance is achieved. And oftentimes these diets do not work because they are too restrictive and cause negative feelings around food, even when the diet is no longer being followed. Intuitive eating provides freedom from these behaviors by being a sustainable way of eating that allows you to be comfortable around food and trust yourself. The concept of intuitive eating offers a lot of positives. However, there are still some negatives to it. A downside to this lifestyle is that it can be misinterpreted. But how so? While intuitive eating's foundation is based on giving yourself permission to eat foods that are pleasing to you in adequate amounts, this concept can be easily misinterpreted as eating recklessly and essentially giving up and eating whatever the heck you want. It does not mean eating, but includes having those fun foods, and reasonable portions too, as long with a balanced diet. So the key here is balance and enjoy more pleasurable foods, but do not neglect having a well-balanced diet too. So this is kind of like a comparison chart between the similarities of mindful eating. So on the left-hand side is how somebody in a mindful eating mentality might think, and then on the right side is a intuitive eating mentality. So for example, hunger eating awareness training. In a mindful eating setting, they'll think of this, but then intuitive eating, you'll honor your hunger. Another comparison would be like meeting emotional needs in a healthy way would be mindful eating, whereas intuitive eating, coping with your feelings without using food, like the journaling method that I talked about as an alternative. And the mindful eating approach accepts body and body image and non-judgment of your physique, whereas intuitive eating respects your body. So they're pretty similar, but there are like some slight differences with how you like the mentality of it. So to adapt an intuitive eating approach, one has to transform their feelings of food and essentially erase what diet culture has taught us. This can be done by rejecting the diet mentality. This process takes time to accomplish, and one would not suspect instant results overnight. This chart compares the thought process between having a dieting mentality versus a non-diet mentality on the same topic. For example, for the issue of eating and food choices, the diet mentality asks questions such as, do I deserve it? Or if I eat a heavy food, I will find a way to make up for it. Whereas the non-diet mentality poses questions such as, am I hungry, or will I be deprived if I don't eat it? The middle column, or dieting mentality, focuses on the numbers, the quantities, and the negative self-esteem around food, exercise, and progress. Whereas the non-diet mentality, or the column on the right, revolves around listening to one's feelings, including positive self-talk and trusting one's own instincts around these issues. So as you assess your hunger, this is an example. If you assess your hunger to be a 4 on the hunger scale, which means not hungry enough to eat a whole meal, but hungry enough to eat a snack. You think about what you want to eat, and a cupcake pops into your head as an option. But you also have veggies and hummus as a snack option too. You think about it, and the diet mentality says, wait, no, I can't eat a cupcake. That's not healthy for me. Plus, I don't feel like exercising to burn it off. You ignore your internal cues of what you really want and decide to eat the veggies and hummus instead, because eating the cupcake would feel bad, even though the cupcake was really what you wanted to satisfy your sweet tooth. So you eat the veggies and still really want the cupcake though. If the same situation was presented in a non-diet mentality, you know the vegetables and hummus would be the healthier option, but you realize that eating that would not satisfy your craving. So you decide to eat the cupcake instead and move on with your day. No guilt, no regrets, no deprivation. All right, and then our last quiz. And which belief and or behavior would someone who is following an intuitive eating pattern be most likely to do? And I'll give you guys a couple minutes to answer. All right, so if you said A was the correct answer, you were right. This answer demonstrates balance and also positive thoughts towards food that would otherwise have negative assumptions. B is not correct because this demonstrates feelings of guilt towards a food that diet culture would label as bad. C is also not correct and is tricky because this answer lies in that gray area of intuitive eating, but not correct because this demonstrates a lack of rationality around foods. Intuitive eating includes a balanced diet, and here consuming 3 times a day just because that's what they thought would make them feel better is not justifiable here. And D is also incorrect because it demonstrates behavior consistent with dieting by ignoring cravings and labeling foods as good and bad. So good job on that one. And to summarize everything that we talked about today, intuitive eating is an evidence-based mind-body approach to helpful long-term eating patterns. And Haze paradigm shifts the focus from weight management to a health-focused one. And also keep in mind that adapting these to behavior changes and or eating patterns will take time, and also a mental transformation as well, especially with the break from weight stigma. It'll take time to break the long-term negative effects associated with all of that. But if you all keep working at it and get on page together and educate your friends, colleagues, peers, family, there's hope to transform this, I guess, like culture in our country. So trust yourself and you know your body better than anyone. And I'm gonna leave that right there. So thanks for letting me present. I had a lot of fun and those are my references. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kimmy. We really appreciate that wonderful insight. Open it up right now. If anybody has any questions, we can take a few questions. If not, that's all right too. I really appreciate your time and your insight. This is something that I'm very interested in as well. So this filled my cup up for sure.
Good. I'm glad that not just the students found it interesting, but you as well. And thanks for moving through my slides for me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to end the recording here. So again, y'all, thanks again for everybody participating. Kimmy, again, thank you. If we do have some additional sessions Wednesday and Thursday, we also have in-person activities this afternoon starting at 2 o'clock on the intramural field. You all can visit the Rowan website, the Rowan Thrive website, or Prof link to learn more about various dimensions of well-being and other programming. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.